Is that the new one or the old one?
That's the one that she gave me today.
Sure. Okay, go, skip to. That's the one that is powerful. I had a guy with that. Oh, like this. So that must be where it was. I apologize about that. I didn't realize they had sent me an update. Yes, that's it. On the second slide.
Is someone going to do a welcome to the crowd or anything like that? I know, I've got it. Just what that is. I know, we're fine. I'll do it. Just tell me when it's time.
Grab anything you find. It's good. Please go introduce me.
Okay, I think we got it. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. We are so honored and excited to have David Winston join us tonight for this lecture on herbal formulas for effective stress relief, and we're so grateful for your patience while we got things ready and experienced these technical difficulties. So we won't hold you up any further. David Winston.
If I take that out of there, it's not going to like throw everything.
It's not hooked to anything. We're just going to be advancing slides.
Oh, you're going to advance them manually?
Yes.
Okay, perfectly good. All right, well, good evening, everyone. I'm sure we're supposed to be a whole lot more people, but I guess they had technical difficulties too. So
72 tickets claimed and over 200 on the wait list.
Yeah, well, okay. So I was doing the keynote talk down at a conference I was teaching at this summer. And the person who, they had a similar kind of situation, and they didn't have PowerPoint on their computer. Well, I had a PowerPoint presentation for my keynote. And so they said, oh, that's okay, we'll download it off the internet. Well, the free downloadables thing off the internet is not really PowerPoint. It's sort of PowerPoint light. And so here I am doing my keynote, and about 35% of my slides are just blank. They're just white. And it was a very visually oriented keynote. And I just kind of went with it and said, well, this is this during the middle of the winter in a blizzard. So we went with what was, and I was prepared to, actually that's what this thing's here, just in case. I was going to just sort of add, kind of ad-lib to the presentation, but we don't need to do that. And I want to thank Olivia for really sticking with this and making this happen, because there is nothing more frustrating than, technology is phenomenal when it works. And as someone who is a bit of a Luddite and doesn't understand technology at all, I'm always in awe of people who actually can figure this stuff out. Because if it was up to me, I would be doing a talk without PowerPoint, because I couldn't go beyond that. So anyway, without further ado, tonight's talk is Herbs and Herbal Formulas for Stress Relief. And this is an area that I have taught a lot about. Some of you, I don't know how many of you know about me or don't know about me, so I'll just take a minute to sort of introduce myself for a second. My name is David Winston. I am a clinical herbalist and ethnobotanist. I've been studying herbal medicine for 49 years. I'm trained in Chinese, Southeastern, and Western eclectic herbal traditions. I've been in clinical practice for 42 years. And I always tell, I'm partially kidding, but I'm kind of not. I always tell people that after 49 years, I now feel comfortable calling myself an advanced beginner. And that's because it doesn't matter how much you know about herbal medicine, there's always way more to learn. I mean, anybody who tells you that they know it, yeah, right, run away. Because it's endless. I mean, you know, in my Herb Studies program, there is not a week that goes by where a student doesn't come in with a question about some person who has some disease that I've never heard of. And I've been doing this a long time, so I had a doctor call me up about, I don't know, 8 months ago. And he has this patient who has this disease. There's 7 known cases in the world, and he wants to know if I have any experience with this illness. I never even heard of it. It's like, yeah, I have lots of experience. I've treated all 7 people, sure. So the reality is that some people find it daunting, you know, that herbal medicine is so vast and there's so much to know. And I find it exciting. I find it absolutely wonderful because I'm too old to have been diagnosed, but if I had been younger, I would have been diagnosed with ADHD, and I'm also dyslexic. And so, therefore, if herbal medicine was a really finite body of knowledge, I would have gotten bored and moved on to something else a very long time ago. The fact that it is endless and there's constant room for growth and new knowledge, to me, is exciting. And maybe, if we're really lucky, I'll go off on one of my really geeky tangents tonight and talk about like some of the new research that may, you know, relate to our topic tonight, because there's just always cool things coming about. So, next slide, please. Okay, good, this is the right one. Okay, so with stress, basically we have 2 primary stress activated systems in our body. The first one is called the SAS, the sympathoadrenal system. And the sympathoadrenal system is your fight or flight mechanism. So this is what is triggered by acute stress. And so as you see there, you know, this guy is looking a little bit stressed out.
I think that was Olivia for the ministry.
Yeah, just a little.
I was thinking that, but I wasn't going to say it, Alice. Anyway, occasional stress is normal. So the first time, I remember many years ago, I was asked to do this presentation, and the audience was 10,000 people in the stadium. And you had these huge stadium screens either side of me that were like 20 feet tall. So if I kind of glanced over, there was like a picture of my head that was 20 feet tall. And it was a bit nerve-wracking, and I had never done this before, nothing of that size. I guess it's about 15, 20 years ago. And I was so nervous, I couldn't sleep the night before. And maybe some of you remember that when, for instance, when you went from grade school to junior high school and you switched schools, and maybe the night before you went to your new school, you were so nervous you could say, that kind of thing is not unusual or abnormal. That's fine. The problem is we live in one of the most stress-filled, complex cultures that exist in the world. I mean, yes, there are places that are more stressed out than we are, but most of them are active war zones. But we live in this crazy, complex culture. And because of that, most of us are in a state of fight or flight on an everyday basis. And this is something that's supposed to be a once-in-a-while phenomenon when you're being chased by a lion, which wouldn't happen very often, or whatever. And so, therefore, number one, most of us are experiencing acute stress on a daily basis. Please. I'll just kind of go like this. All right, now on the other hand, the second system that is affected by stress is called the HPA axis. And actually, it's the thing where we skipped ahead a slide, if I'm not mistaken. Can you just go back one? There should be another slide. No? And before that? Let's go back one more. Oh, we seem to be missing a slide. Okay, so just go forward again, please. All right. So the other system that's affected by stress is called the HPA axis. Let me write that down since I actually have a board with a marker. Might as well use it. So the HPA axis, and it's good to write that down because I had somebody recently, I was doing a lecture and somebody heard that, and I can't remember what they said. They thought I was saying HPA axis is what they thought I was saying. So it's axis. This stands for the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. This is one of the master control systems in the body that controls all endocrine function. It controls a significant amount of nervous system function, a significant amount of immune function, as well as cardiovascular and digestive function. We are talking about a lot of stuff that is controlled through the HPA axis. Whereas the SAS deals with acute stress, the HPA axis deals with chronic stress. And so for people who are chronically stressed out, and of course one of the sequelae of chronic stress is elevation of stress hormones. And the elevation of stress hormones, especially cortisol and epinephrine, but mostly cortisol, leads to a number of things. Chronically elevated cortisol levels, which by the way, there's another cause of chronically elevated cortisol. One is stress. The other is belly fat. So if you, and you don't have to be really overweight. If you have a belly, you have belly fat. Belly fat is the most metabolically active fat in the body. And when I say metabolically active, I don't mean in a good way. And so that means both of these things increase cortisol. Now, here's the problem. Increased cortisol levels are associated with increased hypertension. Increased cortisol levels are associated with increased belly fat deposition. Increased belly fat deposition is related to increased cortisol. Increased cortisol is related to increased inflammation. Increased inflammation is associated with increased cortisol levels. You're starting to get this kind of feedback thing here. Chronically elevated cortisol levels decreases immune function. It impairs digestion. It inhibits circulation, and it reduces sleep quality. Oh, I forgot to tell you that a lack of sleep also increases cortisol level, increases deposition of belly fat, increases hypertension, increases blood sugar levels. In a study they did last year, they took a guy who was young in his 20s, healthy in every parameter, and they kept him awake. Basically, wouldn't let him sleep more than 2 or 3 hours a night for 2 weeks. And in 2 weeks, they turned him into, from a healthy young man to somebody with full-blown metabolic syndrome, just from lack of sleep. Now, I actually want to take a moment to say something about what we talk about. We're going to be talking about some herbal formulas and individual herbs. Let me say 2 things. First off, tonight's presentation is, of course, Smile Herb Shop is so kind to host us tonight. But this is also presented by my company, Herbalist and Alchemist. And as such, when I do talks for them, I don't really do many talks for them. When I travel, like in the last 2 months, I've taught in British Columbia, Italy, London, Toronto, here, and somewhere else. I don't know. Oh, good. Nice.
No, you do that.
Come back. So anyway, it's all right. I'm going off on this side right now. So it will come back to us. So when I do talks for Herbalists and Alchemists, they're promotional talks.
No, this
all right,
is-
so we're going to be talking
it's doing that
about
thing again.
products and things like that. But what I want you to understand is, even when I do a promotional talk, no more than half of it's promotional. The other part is very much, it's all educational, but I'm not interested in just doing pure promotional stuff. I'm not interested in that. I want you to leave tonight with knowledge. And we'll see. How much? one way or another, you're going to get some good information tonight. Oh, by the way, if you don't get this back, you'll get a whole lot more educational stuff and no promotional stuff. With one of any of those pictures. So where was I going? I was going to tell you one other thing. I kind of apologize. I got a little flustered.
The last bullet point was about skin tags and cancer and.
Yeah, well, it's not what I was going to tell you about.
Yes, but it's
Yeah,
in
no,
here.
no,
It's
that's
just not
all,
working.
that's all. Doesn't matter. Okay, so
The computer's gone.
sleep quality, that is it, thank you. So what I was going to say was that we're going to talk about herbs and herbal products, or at least I hope we're going to talk about herbs and herbal products. But herbs are not foundational. Well, I suppose that they would be.
I know, if you want to follow.
Yeah, that'd be kind of weird. So, herbs are not foundational. Nobody was ever sick because of the lack of herbs. Nobody was ever ill because of herb deficiency. And so when we are talking about stress relief, when we're talking about illness in general, we have to first look at foundational things. What is foundation? Foundation is lifestyle, and that's why where it came in from sleep. So foundation is adequate sleep, not just the long enough period of sleep, quality of sleep. So for instance, how many of you, are any of you practitioners?